Hi, I'm Anoop Parikh, and welcome to our first podcast of The Fast and the Curious.
For my next guest, the one, the only.
Hey, we're talking here!
Today, we'll be speaking with 7 bright young minds who recently competed in the Conrad Challenge, which is a STEM competition for students between the ages of 13 and 18, where they apply innovation, science, and technology to solve real-world problems with a global impact. A few months ago, these 7 students competed in a challenge to address green buildings and came out as a winning team. As a prize, we offered to bring them onto our YouTube channel and chat further. So let's bring them out. First, we have Simrit Ranjan, who is from Ashburn, Virginia, a rising junior into high school with dreams of attending the University of California, Berkeley.
Hi.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for joining, Simrit. And next we have, we'll have Alyssa joining later. So we also have Jessica Yee coming to us from Herndon, Virginia, also a rising junior with dreams of attending Wharton School of Business at UPenn. Hi, Jessica. And then we have Vihan Mathur, also in the East Coast out in McLean, Virginia, also a rising junior with dreams to attend Stanford University. Vihan, we have you on mute.
Hi.
Thanks for joining. Next, we have Mika Dewar. I hope I said that right. Coming to us from Northern Virginia, also a rising junior. Wow, lots of juniors this year. And with dreams of attending either MIT or Caltech. Hi, Mika.
Hey.
Next, we have Kevin Zhang, currently in Vancouver, but originally a hometown and I had to research and look this up. I hope I say it right. Jiangzhou, China. And Kevin is a rising senior, so one of our eldest, most experienced here, and currently still exploring his options and what his dream college would be. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, everyone.
And lastly, but of course not least, we have Trisha Sakamuri, hometown of Ashburn, Virginia. So I guess that makes 2 of you friends in the same city. Y'all must know each other well. Also a rising junior with dreams of also attending Stanford. So maybe that's something, I think, is Vihan also from Ashford? Is that what
I'm from McLean, but Simrit's from Ashburn.
Okay, gotcha.
I said Stanford as my dream college too.
Gotcha. Well, hi, Trisha. Thanks for joining.
Hi.
Awesome. Well, it's so great to have you guys. First, I want to just kind of acknowledge that really want you to know this is almost a bucket list item for me in my life. As I've gotten older, one of the things I've always considered is basically being able to, give back to young minds. And so I still consider myself young, but I think it's going to be a great opportunity here to hear from you, hear what life's like, and just the things y'all think, the things y'all are up to. So I'm really excited about this competition. But the first where I really want to start is, of course, Pangea Charging, which is a provider of electric vehicle charging stations, had sponsored your mini-cohort Conrad Challenge back in April. Your school board just received a grant of $1 million and is trying to determine how to allocate these funds to make the school more environmentally friendly. Using the provided list, which products and services would you allocate that money to? Develop a pitch that convinces your principal to spend the money accordingly. And it was around green buildings. It was a problem that I kind of identified, seeing that, real estate is very, call it prolific these days, really developing really cool buildings all over the world. In fact, I recently read that a new New York City is popping up every 34 days when it comes to buildings. And so, yeah, it's kind of mind blowing to me. So, the idea was, how do we address buildings and have them more sustainable? So it was kind of interesting to see y'all were the winning team, which, by the way, congrats, because that was kind of what we promised to bring you on the show for, is being the winners. But kind of tell me, one of you start with, what did you think of that challenge, and maybe what you learned either about green buildings and kind of its role in the world today? Who would like to start off?
I can start if you want.
Sure.
Well, remembering back to that day, it was I think at the end we were a little hectic, to say the least, when working together. Most of us, a few of us were on the same team for Conrad, but we hadn't really known each other for that long, and it was really amazing to work with new people from, Canada too. But I learned that when it came to budgeting the actual expenses for the green environment, we had to use our minds collectively. And at the end, we were changing things, but we had to tell each other to trust each other and know how much we had to trust each other and trust that they're spending the money right, or would spend the money right. But yeah, that's all I really remember from that day.
Yeah, and so to give all the viewers more context, again, the challenge was basically your school board was given $1 million budget to address making the campus more sustainable, and what technologies would you include? So yeah, I mean, I'd love to hear from anyone else about something you learned about green buildings and, again, real estate.
I guess, oh, sorry.
You want to go, Mika?
Okay, sure. I guess something that I kind of just learned was that there's so many more ways to make buildings green that I had originally known about. Like, I kind of knew about solar panels and just kind of the basic things like motion sensor lights, but I didn't really know like the extent that green buildings really went to. Like, I didn't know how many different things you could change in a building to make it more sustainable. So I guess for me, that was just something that was really interesting to see, just how much like we can change to help make our buildings more sustainable.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I think I've obviously, as you know, really involved in the electric vehicle space, which transportation, I believe, accounts for roughly, call it, a third of carbon emissions. And then buildings are probably one of the next biggest contributors, if not the biggest. And so, those are two areas I love focusing on. So it's interesting to hear that. Kevin, I think you had a comment?
Yeah, for sure. I was thinking that, first, I really loved working with my cohort group on this project because, as Simran said, it was really, really hectic in the beginning because we're just trying to get to know each other. But like, we had 30 minutes to get to know each other, to see how each other work, and to work on this challenge. And it was just really, really, it was kind of stressful at first for me, at least. But, as soon as we got in the momentum, we started doing really well with each other. And actually, the teamwork, the spark, I just feel like it clicked suddenly when we're able to just come up with something really fast, on the ball. And, at the end, we won. And I truly appreciate just this experience working with the team.
Yeah, thanks. That's awesome. One of the things that came to mind, so I don't know how much you remember, obviously, like you said, you're under a lot of pressure constraints and time, or rather a lot of pressure and time constraints to compete. And I remember, high school projects like this, it's kind of like, what can we put together to come with a plan that makes sense? And so I was looking through your winning submission and kind of the technologies you all agreed to put into a green building. So I'll just kind of name some of the things y'all mentioned, but solar microgrids, light sensors, cool roofs, composting systems, rainwater collection, dual flush toilets, drip irrigation systems. Is there anything that comes to mind as how y'all were making these decisions? What did you have to research, or how did you decide, hey, these are the things under this budget we're going to include? Is there something that stood out about why you'd pick one technology over the other?
If I could go, when we were like talking as a group, it was more like compromises because like we split into like two different groups and each of them had like different ideas of what we wanted to put into the actual green building. But then when we came together, it was more of like seeing how much of like the best things that we could get with the money that we had. Because at one point we like overestimated by like $10 million. So we were like, wait, we can have so much more stuff than we actually can. And then we realized we made a wrong calculation. And then in like the last 2 seconds, we had to like get rid of like almost half of what we had there. But basically it was more of like making compromises and seeing how much of the most things we could get into the green building as part of the funding.
Got it. Okay. And Jessica, what about you? What thoughts do you have on the challenge that y'all participated in?
I can definitely agree. I think it was also really interesting how we all combined our knowledge of what we know in the past and like what our personal like priorities and work that we've done for climate change. I think something that I think kind of made us stand apart from other submissions was we implemented like a climate change curriculum and we had to focus on sustainability. I think we really tried to look for solutions that are sustainable for the future and something that the school board or the school can use later on as well. And also a lot of the things that really help with climate change, I think we realized in the process is a lot of those things aren't actually super expensive. Like a climate curriculum is not that much money. And I think what was really good is that we had a mix of both like technology, but also other solutions to help, I guess, make school board, I don't know, the school more sustainable.
No, and I love that point that you mentioned. Through your learnings, you found out that it isn't really all that costly to implement some of the most basic sustainable solutions. And, that's where one of the ideas for this whole challenge is that today, a lot of buildings get built and you, Jessica, Trisha, Kevin, me, we don't really get a say in how this building goes up. Let's just say it's a future office, a future apartment. And so the thought process was like, I look around, I drive around my hometown or other cities, and it's like, I wonder if they're kind of listening to the market. Who gets to say how these buildings go up? Or do real estate developers just dictate, hey, we're going to build this building how we think, and then people come and rent and lease space? And so I was saying if there's a way to actively or proactively voice, as a tenant, a resident, the things you'd want to see in the building. So that's kind of where that problem started. And we obviously went the school route. So I'd be curious if there's something as you guys go back to school this fall, maybe if each of you could tell me something that your school, through this project, a sustainable technology you kind of discovered that you'd love to see your school implement, whether it's your high school or perhaps the university you aspire to go to. So I'd love for each of you to share maybe an attribute you think your school could adopt.
I can jump in if that's okay. Awesome. So the drip irrigation system that we implemented was actually a part of my school community garden. And something we implemented too was like vermicomposting, those kind of things. We want to create more of this circular system in our school that pertains to the food that we eat, and also we recycle and compost. So that's already done by our school. And I would love to see, whatever university I go to in the future would implement similar systems like this so that we can actually appreciate the food that we eat and consume and compost. But also I would love to have my high school implement the dual flushing system for toilets, because as dirty as it seems, the fact is that high school students like us aren't very cognizant of how we flush the toilets and stuff, if at all. Can I say that? Can I say that?
Did you what?
No, yeah, but I just feel like, for the systems, it's really wasteful of water that we keep just like flushing it down. And the sensors in the different systems that are, not manual, they just they sense it and they just flush. They sense it, they flush. And it's just like super continuous.
Yeah.
And it's really wasteful of water and the resources that we have that's super limited. And, this is something I really want to implement at my school.
Sweet. Well, I hope you feel empowered and have the courage to bring that up. That's a good point. I've definitely seen those toilets that are just, you're like, hey, I stepped away and it's still flushing like a whole minute later. So I get it. Trisha, do you want to jump in? What would you like to see your high school implement?
So I think one thing that could be implemented, and not even just like high schools, like elementary and middle schools too, is the climate change curriculum. Because when I was younger, we didn't really talk about it in school. We mostly I heard stuff from my friends or the news or my parents, but it was never something that our teachers would actively talk about, like, oh, global warming or oh, climate change, and this is what's happening and this is the effects and this is how we should stop it. So I think that's also something that's really important that we should introduce into schools.
That's awesome. See, I'm pretty far removed from grade school that I didn't even know what's happening in regards to that. I would agree it wasn't talked about when I was in school. I, actually started the environmental club back in high school, and it was just something you had to be proactive about. So I'd be curious. It's kind of interesting to hear you say that it is actively talked about now, but perhaps it obviously needs to get better. So Jessica, how about you?
I definitely think there's a lot of stuff that definitely could be implemented at a lot of levels that aren't really that hard to implement in the first place. I know a lot of schools have established like composting systems, but this is definitely something that can be brought to a lot of different high schools. Like composting, I think could be even like a really good project for service hours possibly, and I think it's just a really good way to be more sustainable, especially since high schoolers we like tend to throw out a lot of food. A lot of food gets thrown out every day. So really establishing composting systems that really aren't that expensive could be a really good way to start working towards a more sustainable future, especially at school with a lot of waste.
That's a great point. I think when there's volume or masses of people, it is probably one of the best situations to offer composting where, let's just say a school of 400, or perhaps depending where you're at, 1,000 kids every day times lunch, times 5 days a week. So it adds up, and it's probably, you're going to get more bang for your buck having such a simple system as composting. So, Mika, what do you think?
Yeah, I guess my idea is kind of like a combination of like basically what everyone said so far. But I know at my school we have a greenhouse, but I don't, and we use compostable utensils and such in the cafeteria, but I don't think we actually compost any of like the food that we eat or like any of the waste that comes from that. So I think using that compost in like my school's greenhouse could be really beneficial. But also I know my old middle school that I graduated from a bit ago had an environmental curriculum. I think that definitely helped to bring awareness to a lot of kids about like how dire the situation with our climate really is. So continuing that in high school and also just bringing it to more schools, just I think is something that could really be improved on. But yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think education is clearly the biggest. I mean, obviously action has to step in at some point. I think we're seeing a lot of that. But again, I just think back to my time in high school, which was, it wasn't talked about. And someone recently asked me, how did I become passionate and really into this? And it was simply seeing the news. This was like in the, I feel so old saying it, but like the late 90s, just watching the news about climate change and things of that nature. And that's what struck action. And so I think you're right. It's just talking about it and inspiring people to do things differently. Vihan?
At least in my school, like I have the privilege of going to a school where we have a lot of green stuff that's already there. So we already have like an electric car station at our school, which is something that I recognize is not available for almost like every school that's in like and around the United States. But I think that kind of privilege that I have by going to a school like the one that I go to, it's really interesting to see what kind of things that we can implement given that there's the funding there. And so I think that something important is to try to like educate about recycling, because in my school and also in like other schools around my county, the recycling system is often not like centralized. So different schools have different recycling guidelines and things like that. And so that gets like really messed up where different things are recycled at different places. So I think that having like a centralized recycling system or teaching kids, especially in elementary school, about recycling, I feel like that's really helpful.
For sure. No, that totally makes sense. And that's one of the most basic things that, I'm always shocked when people don't even have recycling. It's like, really, you're missing, just version 1.0 of like anything earth friendly. That seems to be the easiest thing you can implement. So that makes sense. Now, I am curious. I'm going to put some pictures up on screen, and I'd be curious. It's kind of a layup, but I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. So I see a lot of buildings internationally, and maybe Kevin and some of you who may have traveled internationally, you've seen this. So I know Singapore's world renowned for having really sustainable environment, really green, eco-friendly buildings. And so it often gets me thinking is like, why don't we see these types of buildings here in the US? So if I show you these two apartments, basically, I'd love to hear when you put them side by side, you see buildings here that are what they call luxury apartments. And then there's a second image I'll put up, and I'd be curious which one you'd ideally want to find yourself living in. So if you look at the image on the left or the right, feel free to jump in as you wish. But, both of these buildings to me look pretty awesome, pretty luxurious, high rises. Is there anyone here that would like to comment on which building they'd want to live in as their first choice?
I would definitely go with the one on the left because it just has more outdoorsy feelings. I see some trees on the right side. It seems a little bit like an indoor greenhouse kind of feeling, but I don't really appreciate that a lot because I like more of the outdoors feeling. And typically, living in Vancouver is just, trees everywhere. And I really love that feeling, just having fresh air and open space around me. So for sure, the left side seems much more eco-friendly too.
So by the way, Kevin, I've been to Vancouver. I meant to bring this up earlier. Beautiful, beautiful city. So actually really impressed with the layout, the buildings. Now, I don't think I've seen a building quite like the one on the left in Vancouver, but yeah, like the beautification of that city would be even so much more amazing if you had buildings like that. I agree.
Definitely would be. Yeah, for sure.
Mika, what do you think?
For me, the one on the left, I guess, just because it seems like it just based on surface value, it seems like it's a lot more environmentally friendly. But one thing I guess I would be worried about is the trees, like as they continue to grow, like if the roots would start disrupting the architecture. But I mean, that's just like a long-term problem. But for now, it definitely seems like the one on the left is the more environmentally friendly one.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. This was probably me just coming out of college. I had a friend, and I don't know if in this project, if you found out about this, but like LEED certified buildings, they go through all the possible green attributes you can, have on a building. And I learned about these fascinating concepts of green roofs, just putting greenery and shades and canopies on the shell of the building. It helps keep temperatures down, reduce heat island effect. So, and personally, like, right, you just feel more human, I think, to be able to live up in the sky at the 46th floor and say, oh, like I still see trees. I don't have to look, 40 stories down to see it and enjoy all that. So I think it's hopefully the way of the future. Now, again, y'all are, I have to assume, at home as you go out into the market when you're younger adults, I guess, or older adults. You have a choice to where you live. One of the other things will be is where you work. And so the next one I'll pull up is an image of an office. And these offices, I found two buildings. One's actually a recent brand new building that Google's going to occupy here in Texas very soon. And then another building that I found was I think in Japan. Pretty fascinating concept that was actually built in the 90s. And so I was kind of blown away by how progressive the architect was on that building. So here's a new Google office going up in Texas. Obviously looks pretty nice and sleek. So are there anything just from the exterior you see that you may like? Oh, and before we actually get into that, I want to welcome Alyssa.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining. Sorry we weren't able to get you on earlier, but want to give you a proper introduction. So is it Alyssa?
Yeah, sorry I'm late.
Yeah, no worries. Alyssa, right?
Yes, Alyssa.
Alyssa, joining from Vancouver, beautiful city. And you're a rising college freshman, actually going to Wake Forest this fall, very soon, a couple of weeks, I guess.
Right. Yeah, in just 2 weeks.
Awesome. All right. Well, so I'll catch you up. We were just talking about green buildings, kind of similar to the project y'all worked on. And we had an image pop up where basically trying to see what you think of this building and just if there's anything that speaks to you in terms of eco-friendliness from the building. So have a look at it. Tell me if you think
Great.
You have any thoughts about this building?
From the basic look of it, it looks like it has some trees and greenery, like kind of on the sides, but for the most part, it does seem like it's just glass and kind of a lot of like wasted opportunities to like have something a lot more environmentally friendly.
Sure. And you make a good point about that glass. One of the products I'd mentioned in y'all's project is like what they call kind of smart glass, basically being able to tint, shade. And, I look at this building, it's like, wow, I don't know what the cooling and heating costs will be, but with smart glass, you can kind of shade that whole thing. Think like transition sunglasses, imagine that, having that for a building. The truth is, obviously, it's probably a very green building. In fact, I'm sure on the inside, many things are done extremely well, diligently, and designed quite efficiently. I think what I want to do is compare it to the next image, which again is a building I mentioned in Japan. And like, I look at it and think, wow, how amazing to be able to perhaps work in a building that looks like this, and being able to maybe step out on a break or go walk once we get that image up, but being able to walk and have nature like on top of your building. So yeah, like imagine, just think about the difference that makes to probably the environment. You've got water that probably absorbs better into these, this kind of greenery versus just hitting the streets and, making you prone to flooding and things of that nature. But not to mention the kind of the cooling effect you bring to the city, again, avoiding heat island effect.
If I could add something quickly, recently I went to Seattle, and in the middle of the city is Amazon's sort of new sphere, and it's where some of their employees get to work. And it has all these different types of trees, and it sort of amazed me because it was in the middle of a city, and it just looked so surreal. And you could see some employees working in it. And because of COVID, they didn't let non-employees work or go there. But even when COVID wasn't a thing, they let people come and work in it or just look at all the surrounding trees, and it really looked amazing. And I just hope there are more things like that popping up near me. And yeah.
So what was on the exterior again?
Oh, so it was a glass sphere, but inside there were thousands, I believe, of differing trees, and they had workspaces as well. So they had it like integrated like a work environment with real trees and an environment, and you could walk through it like it was a forest. And it's Amazon, so the Amazon
awesome.
rainforest. So.
Oh, that's really cool. So it was Amazon's office?
Mm-hmm.
That's
and
amazing.
their employees get to work there. I think they can work there. I actually don't know for sure, but I did see some people in there, and I don't know, it just looked so amazing.
Yeah, no, I think that's great for air quality. And think about just where we've been in the last year. I think anyone would be pleased by a more work-friendly environment, or call it, more nature-y inside. So that's awesome. Anyone else seen any fascinating green buildings across their travels or just where they're at?
I think Amazon's other building in DC, like the new headquarters, is also pretty nice. I think it really does integrate nature. I think it's a recent trend in like the recent years, especially with like these big tech companies, is to really like create buildings that have greenery in them. And I think it's good to a certain point, but it's also really important, especially with sustainability, like destroying like the lands around it, because I know construction is very, very like it's not necessarily good for the environment. So I think there's like a fine line between like being sustainable with the building, but also, like kind of like I guess like going into the company like what their ultimate goals are. But I think it's really good that a lot of new buildings are trying to integrate greenery, especially big cities where there isn't much greenery to begin with. And I think it's good that, a lot of new buildings are getting elements of like architecture where there is like a possibility for, green roofs or like trees inside or outside the building. I think it's a good step towards sustainability. But I think definitely like new developments, it's good that there is a sense of greenery, and a lot of like trees and parks and stuff like that with it. So I think we're going towards like a good way in terms of like architecture, especially for like a lot of these big companies and their new headquarters, I guess.
So I'm curious, for all of you growing up in the age of Uber, maybe what's your current mode of transportation? All of y'all seem to be of the driving age. Do all of you have your license, Vihan?
I actually like waited a little bit too long to get my permit. So like I have my permit, but I haven't really driven that much. I kind of like rely on my friends to drive me everywhere. But like I can drive soon, and I go driving sometimes with my dad, but I haven't gotten my license yet.
Got it. And so do you find yourself mostly relying on car transportation? Do you bike, walk? Like your primary means of getting around is what?
It's definitely car. I do like bike around with my friends like near my house, but my school is like pretty far from where I live. So I go by bus to school, but yeah, it's mostly car.
Okay. Glad to hear people are still taking the bus, because again, so far removed, and I'm gonna bring that up a little later. But yeah, I guess Jessica, how are you getting around these days?
I mostly drive. Well, I don't drive. I'm trying to learn. But I think most people around this area tend to drive just because there's not much public transportation around, especially in like the suburbs where I live, which I definitely do think is probably an issue. Like, definitely public transportation is a lot more sustainable than everyone driving. But I think like around here, a lot of people just drive. But I do ride the bus to school, like Fihan does, because it's quite far. But yeah, I think a lot of people drive around here.
And Kevin, how are you getting to and from school, or I guess as you go into college this year? I mean, yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was actually gonna say that when I go into college, I want to get an electric scooter or like electric bike, so I can bike every day and to and from school, like going to cities. Because actually driving, practically in the cities, it's very very crowded. So if you stay in your car for that long, then your car, if it's not an electric vehicle, then the gas will be emitted to the air, which will pollute even more. So I feel like, definitely, as I'm doing right now, I bike way more than I drive. I do have my license, but I choose not to, because I feel like it's just, sunny days in Vancouver. Why would I, just drive around rather than I can just, enjoy the breeze. It's just really a feel good experience for me to bike. I'm getting kind of addicted to it, biking every day. So I would want to continue that in university.
Yeah, I mean, Vancouver's an extremely bike-friendly city. One of the things I miss to be able to do there. So hopefully get back there. But Mika, what about you?
I guess for me, my primary mode of transport would have to be my car, just because I live so far out from my school that the bus doesn't actually like come to me. And just kind of in my area, there's not really a whole ton of bus stops. It's like very suburbsy, kind of like out of the way of everything. But we did get an electric car recently, so hopefully like that's starting to turn things more sustainable.
Your family did?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Can I ask what car y'all got?
Yeah, we got a Tesla Model 3.
Sweet. So yeah, I guess I just want to get a basis of like what folks in your age group, again, like I mentioned, coming up in an age where Uber is so prevalent, but sounds like, still similar. I used to get rides from friends to school, bike a little bit, of course, drive. So now that there's a baseline of kind of how you're getting around, I mean, would love to hear how much y'all are thinking about, are electric vehicles, in your opinion, good for the environment? Do you see another viewpoint to that? Is it something you paid attention to or not as important? And in fact, I just read waking up this morning that President Biden has actually declared that he wants to see kind of basically electric vehicle sales take 50% of all auto sales by the year 2030 here in the US. So would love to hear anyone's thoughts on, what you think about the future of electric vehicles.
I think electric vehicles are definitely, I think there's like two sides to it. It really depends on where you're getting your electricity from, which I think is a big part. Obviously, if you're getting your electricity from like solar power, wind power, water power, a lot of that is a lot more sustainable than, for example, nuclear energy. So I think it really does depend mostly on how you're getting your energy from, because if you're using coal, then it's just as almost as bad as like driving a gas vehicle, if that makes sense. So I think there's like a specific distinction between, where you're getting your power from, and that really just like talks about like how sustainable, like, well, not sustainable, but like how like good for the environment it really is. And I definitely do think that having regulations in place is really good for electric vehicles. I think the EU recently passed like regulation about electric vehicles and how they favored electric vehicles over gas vehicles, but I think it's a really good step. I do think overall electric vehicles are good, but it's like really good to be aware of where your power really comes from, and if you can get like a more sustainable, I guess, way to get power, like for example through solar or wind.
Right. And actually, while we're chatting about it, I was impressed by the EV that kind of got your attention. It was you want to tell us what car you said that would be your ideal electric car?
I chose like the Porsche Taycan or something. I did a little
Taycan,
bit
yeah.
of research, and yeah, okay. Well, I don't think I can pronounce it correctly, but I chose that because it's definitely a really nice car. It's a sports car, very fast, very powerful. And I think it really like shows just how electric cars can really compete with gas cars, especially at this age with the amount of technology that we have. A lot of people like talk about Tesla. It's a really great car, honestly, very good technology. So it just kind of shows that electric vehicles can be just as good as gas cars and could be a really good alternative.
So let me ask you then. You get your license. You've got your first career, making money. You can go out and buy your first car. You're buying a gas Porsche or an electric? Jessica.
I think it depends on price. I think I'm not really sure if the electric is a little bit more, but honestly, depending on the situation, I might just go for electric because ultimately it's better for the environment, and also I'm sure there's going to be a lot of regulation in the future regarding gas versus electric cars. So I think maybe like the electric car would be like a better long-term investment, I feel like.
Yeah, no, and I hear you on budget. I do think the cars need to come down in price and be, on par with gas cars. So, Vihan, let's jump to you. So, what are your thoughts on electric? But yeah, I guess tell me what you think about electric vehicles.
So I don't have an electric vehicle, and I think they're obviously like really good for the environment, but the problem is just like they're so expensive. So that's the problem, that's why like a lot of people don't have them, and why there's such a small amount of electric vehicles that are there on the market and they're like even on the road. But and electric vehicles are still good, but there's still environmental effects that come like from where they get their electricity on the electricity grid, and then also like how the cars are built, because a lot of the times cars, when they're being built, they're obviously using fossil fuels.
And so tell me about your dream car. It sounded like there was one that caught your eye, which I think catches a lot of people's eyes. It's doing quite well. Which car was that?
So I put the Tesla Model X, but like to be completely honest, I didn't know that much about like electric cars, and Tesla Model X is like probably the most like popular one, and the one that like the most people know about when they think of like electric cars. They think of Tesla, so that's why I put that. But it's also more of like a luxury car, as are like there's not really many electric vehicles that are available to like the common consumer. I feel like hybrid cars are also like more accessible to like the average consumer.
Right. Now, this is all fascinating to hear y'all's perspective, especially I'm always intrigued by what the younger generation hears, knows, and like where their thought process is. So, Simrith, let's have you jump in. What do you actually mentioned a car that I wasn't familiar with. So I don't, tell me if it's already electric. Is it?
It's definitely not electric. It's like a sports car, so
Wow.
It's definitely not electric. But
this must be a high school thing. I feel like y'all remind me of my age, where everyone's into the sporty race cars. So yeah, tell me about it.
I think, well, my dad and my mom, they have a hybrid car. We got it 3 years ago, and I think we picked it based on price. And I guess a little trust, having I don't know, but its mileage per gallon was like, it's 40 miles per gallon, which helps because my school is kind of far. But one of my best friends has a Tesla, which whenever I get rides from her, it's smooth, and it's definitely a great experience. Yeah, and I think comparing the cars, or when I asked my parents about, why they picked the hybrid instead of maybe like an electric car, it was mainly because of price. So I think with what you were saying about President Biden's 2030 goals, I think it's definitely possible if some of the prices kind of get lower, but maybe Trisha has something to add.
I think she's also into fast cars. Trisha, you want to tell me the car you were hoping to be electric? I don't know if it's offered, but tell me the car you were thinking.
So I was looking at the McLaren 650. It's also another sports car, but I was just doing a little bit of research on just like, I think cars that I would have been interested in. And it really caught my eye about how fast it went from 0 to like 60 and 0 to 100 like miles per hour. Like I searched it up and it said that it could go from 0 to 100 miles per hour in 5.7 seconds, which was absolutely insane. The price is a little bit much, and it is a gas car as of now, so it doesn't really exist. But I was really interested in that type of car.
Y'all have a serious need for speed. I'm impressed. Yeah, go ahead.
No. Oh, no, I was just going to say, so I actually have a Tesla, and I've had it for like 2.5 years, and it's a great car. Like, I love like autopilot and everything, and all like the little, like I don't know, it's just a really good car. It goes really smooth. It's easier to drive. But one thing that I would say that our family has trouble with is we can't really take it on long trips because its charging can go it goes up to 200 miles for each charge. But the thing is, if we want to go on a longer trip, right now there aren't that many charging ports in hotels or places to stay. So we can't really take that car with us. So we ended up taking our gas car. If we were going to let's say North Carolina or South Carolina, which is farther, we're not able to take that car, which doesn't really help the environment in the same way. But yeah.
No, I feel you on that. I do think, and that's so honest, because I think you're already driving one of the best EVs out there, has a great range, but you're mentioning you still can't get to the destinations you need, even with kind of existing charging infrastructure. So we got to grow that. So Kevin, you had brought up some interesting kind of ideas about the car you ideally would see yourself in, whether that exists today or not. Tell me about that.
Yeah, unlike the other people, which I totally respect, having the branded cars, I didn't really have a particular car in mind, but one aspect I would really love to have my dream car have is to really have the solar panel on top so it can recharge as we drive. And as Trisha said, the mileage for electric cars nowadays are just not enough for us to make longer road trips. And for me, that absolutely loves to make longer road trips, for skiing on Whistler, which takes 2.5 hour drives to get to the mountain. Then that will take so much there's so much distance that we have to cover with the car that a normal Tesla might not be able to handle. So being sunny in Vancouver in the summer, I was just feeling if we can have a car that recharges through its roof while we're driving, then that means we don't have to recharge and stop and recharge again. And I just feel that covers, that saves time, that saves money with the recharging system, and also saves our stress level, because having to wait at a motel or something to charge overnight, or to have a long lineup of Teslas waiting to charge at that one electric station, that's just too stressful for me to handle, I feel like. So I would rather have a car that would recharge as we drive through a sunny day.
And I don't even have close to the engineering brains to solve that, but I hear you. I wish and hope that is the future. I think I've seen again artistic renderings. I wonder what the possibilities of that are. So I hear you on that. Let's see, Mika, did you share what would be your favorite electric car?
I didn't really have anything super specific in mind, but either a sports car, kind of like a big SUV, like a Hummer, would probably be my go-to. I know that Mercedes is working on, I think, an electric sports car, and I've seen some ads for electric Jeeps, so hopefully that's not too far in the future. But yeah, I guess just something that's practical, kind of as a lot of people have mentioned so far. A big thing with my current Tesla is the range. We can't take it anywhere too far because there's just not a lot of charging stations around, and also if it's not a hypercharging station, it just takes a really long time to charge. So I think that's something that definitely needs to be improved upon, just in terms of making it actually practical for a lot of people to buy an electric vehicle. But yeah, definitely a sports car, kind of a big SUV would probably be my go-to.
So that big SUV kind of preference, do you do or have a preference for the outdoors, or I don't know if you're into camping or anything like that?
Yeah, I definitely want to go. I don't really do too much right now, but I definitely want to go on kind of more off-road camping trips in the future. So something that would actually be able to take me there would be really nice to have.
So I'm going to suggest you check out two cars. One that I've seen in person, actually both, but the one that's newer, the Rivian truck or SUV. They make them in both variations. So check that out if you haven't. They're really built for the outdoors. I think they're calling it an adventure vehicle. You have a pull-out kitchen and really cool stuff. And then of course, recently saw the Ford F-150, which again, I think all these trucks and cars are moving in the direction to where you can literally live off of it if you wanted to. So it's definitely something worth checking out. Okay, so actually on that note of just the age group y'all are and how you're kind of growing up through life right now, I guess, and where things are headed, I can imagine a lot of people not just kind of exploring the outdoors, but maybe as you go to school, you go to work, it's just remote work's taking off. People are just on the go all the time. And so I wanted to see what you think about self-driving cars. Would anyone opt in for that like today? Are you on board?
I would definitely not. I don't know. I just feel like there's I think there are like a lot of movies that talk about like, oh, there's self-driving cars and then someone hacks it and then the car just goes out of control and then it crashes. Like, I'm not saying like that will happen. It's just I feel like if self-driving cars come out now, I think the technology is too new and too like it's just too new in order for us to actually know if it's safe or not. I feel like if they come out in a couple of years, then maybe. And with self-driving cars, I think a lot of the traffic and road regulations might have to change. So there's definitely going to be a lot of like modifications that have to happen to like how we travel when that does come out. So I'm kind of iffy on it. I feel like it's better if we're like in control of where we're going and like yeah.
Simrith, are you okay with autonomous self-driving or not a fan?
Oh, I'm definitely a fan. I think it's super cool. And, talking about texting and driving, like that's the main reason my parents are really scared for me to drive. They know I get distracted easily, and it's a valid point. But if you think of the millions who get into car crashes and, drowsy driving and drunk driving, I totally understand that it's new and it's a sci-fi tech that's self-driving cars are kind of a scary thought, but they're slowly already becoming a tiny part of our lives. And there's the other aspect that they're also safe for people who tend to get distracted, if that makes sense. And with all the new image recognition and things like that, and security is obviously a really big concern, and I definitely think that's a good concern that Alyssa brought up. But on the other end, there's one of the leading causes of death in America is car crashes, and I feel like maybe self-driving cars could help with that. Just react faster or notify a driver if they're getting sleepier, things like that.
Vihan, love to hear from you. Self-driving, yay or nay?
Yeah, so like I'm a big fan of like sci-fi movies and where like I can see like self-car drivings in movies, but I've actually like discussed this like before, and I would like it would be really cool if we could have self-driving cars, but it's also more of like an ethical question to determine how like autonomous cars or like self-driving cars, how they would deal with things like if there's like specific situations and like traffic environments, and like how responsibility would go forward if there is a crash, and how to like manage the impacts of a crash. Because I don't know if you've heard about like the trolley problem, but it's like something that you can kind of like think about when thinking about a self-driving car. If there was like a possibility of running over like 2 people or 5 people, how would an autonomous car know what to do, and how would it think about that ethically? So it's kind of a concern right now to think about self-driving cars, because there's just the possibility of like an artificial intelligence error versus like a human error. It's like a big like difference.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm hoping someone like you can come out and solve that after you get that degree. Jessica, what do you think?
I definitely have to agree with Vihan. I think there's a lot of ethical concerns with self-driving cars, and I think what we have right now is actually a decent system. I think ultimately the driver is responsible for like whatever actions they do on the road. Like even with Teslas and how they have like relatively like Teslas can like basically drive on themselves by themselves. But I think it's a matter of, a balance between, how much is the driver contributing and how much is the car contributing. Because like Vihan mentioned, ultimately a robot isn't really able to make these decisions as much as we train it. I don't think it's like actually possible from an ethical standpoint. So I think if we do have self-driving cars at one point, I think it is a good we do really have to keep like drivers responsible for what they do, because ultimately the driver is the one operating the vehicle, operating the AI. So ultimately I do think like there's a fine line, I guess, between like what is like I guess, possible and like what like regulations would be possibly in place. But yeah, I definitely do think with self-driving cars, I think it's a good part, like the future. It might keep roads more safe. Definitely still, the driver is ultimately responsible for whatever happens.
Right. No, I agree. I mean, Trisha and Kevin, I mean, how much more enjoyable would it be to get your commute to school while you're whether last minute studying, knocking out an assignment, catching up with a friend? I mean, would that not be, more engaging or better if you could do that?
I mean, yeah, I would love that. Especially if I live super far from school, like 1 hour drive. I would rather be doing my homework last minute than like trying to drive and be like, oh wait, like how do I do this? What's 1 plus 1? Like, you know. But yeah, I mean, with the self-driving car, I would rather like to test it out. I want to be a part of the first or the early adopters of self-driving systems. And I was just looking at some YouTube videos before on the system called LiDAR. I think this person graduated from Stanford. His name's Austin Russell. He's developing this sensing system for cars to sense like the environment around them and to make this kind of AI vision to help them identify which objects to avoid, which objects to not avoid. And I really like that aspect where you can use this kind of system to identify as like a human eye would, but much quicker, much more efficiently, and much more accurately. And also another example I saw was like this concept. It's called cloud computing, where if a lot of these autonomous vehicles are in this one area, for example, in Vancouver, then that means in this city, the whole road is built on a system where autonomous vehicles can drive together, and there is no other vehicles allowed in there, which basically has this whole range of systems that is a centralized I guess brain that allows these cars to communicate with each other rather than humans communicating with each other. And I just felt like that's such a cool idea, but also kind of intimidating, because if that one system goes wrong, would it affect this whole kind of would it create the chain reaction to the all other cars that would be driving at the same time? So it would be really interesting to see how how future turns out. But yeah, I would love to be a part of this experiment.
Yeah, and I think we're going to be part of it, whether we like it or not, I think. Trisha, you had any thoughts on that?
Yeah,
You
so
probably can enable your Tesla right now on
yeah,
self-driving
so
too.
that's what I was going to talk about. Like, the Tesla already has some self-driving features. Like, recently they added that when there's like a red light, the car will come to a stop on its own, and when there's a green light, like it'll make a little sound and it'll like let you know that you can go. And there's also auto drive, where it can like drive on highways and like roads where you don't have to do that many turns like on its own. So it's really cool. But I think that being completely distracted from driving, like if you were doing homework or if you were like texting or something while the car is driving, I don't think that's safe at all, because technology glitches. Like if this car, like this happened to me once, like the car, since there were no lines painted on the road, the car didn't recognize it, and it kind of like started not going straight and shaking. So like my dad had to take control and start driving again. Like I definitely feel like people should be somewhat focused on driving. Like the car can be driving itself. Like they don't have to be completely turning the wheel and everything, but they should have some level of focus put into the driving, or it could be very dangerous.
So you think that is your experience has been good so far, or?
So far it's been like really good. I think that it's just that I don't think we can go completely self-driving, like focus on one thing or something else separately while the car is driving on its own. But I think what Tesla's doing now is pretty cool, and it works really great.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So I guess really, it's for me, it's just fascinating to hear again, just the thoughts across the board of how y'all are viewing all this, how the world's changing in transportation, green building, sustainability. Ultimately, I know you all are, again, very ambitious, bright students who are doing some pretty amazing things. So I wanted to give you all an opportunity to really plug some of the stuff y'all are up to. So I guess we'll start it off by, the person you find most inspiring or would like to meet, which some of you have shared with me. So I'll bring you up one by one. Want to hear the most inspiring person, many of whom I actually hadn't heard of. So this is kind of informative for me, and I love learning about new people and what they're up to. So Mika, if we could start with you, most inspiring person to you that you'd like to meet, and then tell us a little bit about stuff that you're up to that you'd like to plug.
Sure. So I guess the most inspiring person that I would like to meet would be Lewis Hamilton. He's not really like a scientist or anything, but he's a Formula One driver. And not only is he just a really great driver and a really great team player, but he also does a lot of work to kind of like bring attention to issues that people are facing right now. Like he works a lot with the environment. I know that he's gone vegan. And then also like he works a lot with diversity and inclusion, especially in terms of Formula One, where you don't really see a lot of that, like as there is right now. So he just works with a lot of really great causes and uses his big platform to kind of bring attention to a lot of really important issues. What I'm doing right now is that I'm the CEO of Warp Perception, and essentially what we do there is we're focused on protecting the public and younger generations from disinformation and synthetic media, basically like deepfakes. And right now we're kind of working on bringing education tools to younger generations so that they can better protect themselves from this disinformation. But our longer term goal would be to create an app that allows users to kind of upload videos and images and check and verify whether or not it's real or it's been fabricated. So that's kind of what I'm working on right now.
I can only compare it to the foolishness I was up to at your age, and you guys are developing apps and businesses. Amazing. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I hope you told me that kind of a dream career would be in the space industry. I'd love for you to share maybe quickly what you thought about the recent space journeys of both Sir Richard Branson, Bezos. Any thoughts on that? Following that closely?
Yeah, definitely. I've been keeping up with that. Personally, I think it definitely is starting to open up a lot of things like kind of space tourism, but for me, I feel like space travel should be something more of just exploring our solar system, and it should be more learning and less about kind of capitalizing on it in a sense. And I guess that's kind of what bothers me a bit about like these trips. We see a bunch of like billionaires starting to like try and go to space. And while that's really great for innovation, I feel like unless it's necessarily like trying to learn something or it actually has kind of like a bigger purpose, I feel like the money could be spent better elsewhere. Like, for example, working on the environment or, you know, helping other things like world hunger. But that's just kind of my personal opinion.
Yeah, no, I think that sentiment's been shared quite a bit publicly, but no, it's regardless, you know, wish you well in that journey, and I'm sure you'll do great exploring that career. So Kevin, let's bring you up. So I know that your inspiring person to meet is someone that should be quite common to viewers on the Fast and the Curious. Yeah, just tell me about who you'd like to meet. Maybe you can help me get him on this podcast someday soon.
Yeah. Well, as Anoop probably mentioned, it's definitely very common to everyone's or most people's role models in the tech world. It's Elon Musk. But I feel like what I really want to learn from him if I would meet him is his unconventional way of thinking and his kind of quirkiness. I feel like this quirkiness is not generally accepted by society, especially high school students, when everyone wants to fit in the particular categories or groups that they would see themselves in the future or right now, just to be more, I guess, quote unquote popular or more fitting in the high school culture. And Elon Musk is not that kind of person. He's just going his own way and doing his own things until he's been bullied, he's been harassed and threatened, but it's all going on, the bad things that happen to him until he actually gets really famous, makes a lot of money, and then people start saying, hey, I love you, like you're my role model, I want to be like you. But it's really that kind of drive that he has and the grit that he has to really internalize who he is and to find out why he's doing so. That really inspires me, because he's not seeing himself as, I'm doing it for myself. He's doing it for the vision that he sees in the whole humanity and the future that he envisions to live in. So that's something I really appreciate.
No, I feel that big time, because I think I don't know how, again, I don't know if this is like politically correct, but like I think nerd is is in, and it's been in for a couple of years, if not like over the last decade. But I agree with you that it's so awesome that role models now are like sharp people who may have, endured tougher times, but they come out sharper, doing world saving things or world changing things rather. So yeah, I can respect why you find him as an inspiration. So tell me a little bit about what you'd like to plug. I know you mentioned earlier, running a business, it sounds like, perhaps leading it. Tell us about that.
Yeah, for sure. I'm actually running multiple businesses, but the one I would love to plug is when I started with Alyssa. It's called Doublo, and it's basically a youth eco-friendly company that develops and manufactures seed material. Basically, it's plantable and biodegradable, and it's made from waste like coffee grounds, fibrous residues like paper, and mushrooms. So basically, we grow the materials instead of making them from less organic like plastics or paper, and we're just taking the waste and making this circular economy that encourages people to be more sustainable in their daily lives rather than having to quote unquote go out and actually try to do some big things to help the environment. It really just starts from our own doorsteps, and that's something we want to encourage with our audience.
And that's Doublo Is it called Doublo or Doublo Solutions?
Doublo Solutions.
Doublo. Okay. And so just to get it right, is it, I'd seen an image you shared. Is it kind of think on a coffee cup, you put a holder and it like keeps you from, burning your hand, but it's that material that you're producing?
Yeah. So the material we're currently producing, we're starting off with just the seed and the paper, and we're taking recycled paper from like households, from businesses, and we're making them plantable. So basically, instead of throwing the coffee sleeves away after you use it, you can actually plant it in the soil in your own garden and watch it grow into veggies, into fruits and herbs.
That's awesome. Amazing that you're already up to running apparently multiple businesses. So there we go. There's the image. Is that y'all's art that y'all are putting on there?
Yeah. So this is an initiative we're starting with a charity called Covenant House Vancouver. And what they're trying to do is that they're helping homeless youth and runaway youth that are surviving in, very the poorer areas in Vancouver. And what we're trying to do is that we want to promote the youth, the values that the youth have by their art. So this artist actually drew this art on our sleeves, and we're basically distributing them mass in the different cafes that we have in Vancouver.
That's great, man. Awesome. Well, I wish you the best of luck in that kind of endeavor.
Thank you.
Trisha, so I believe you are running a nonprofit. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I'm a co-founder of a nonprofit called Girls in Literature, and our mission is to collect books and donate them to girls around the world who are in need, like they can't afford books or they just don't have access to books. So that's what we're trying to do. So far, we've shipped to girls in Asia and Africa, and we recently had a book drive, I think 2 weekends ago, and we were able to collect around 250 books, which is insane in one weekend.
That's amazing. I saw a picture, I think, of y'all tabling, doing that collection drive. And actually, as I was reading about it last night, so definitely a great initiative. My sister-in-law, I think, would love it, so I'm going to share that with her. So really proud that you're doing that. Simrith, would love to hear your most inspiring person to meet, and then what you'd like to plug.
Yeah, so her name is Kiran Mazumdar Shah, and what most people know about her is she's the first self-made billionaire in India, and she's also the only. And I guess I look up to her a lot because she was able to accomplish so much in an environment where not every girl is empowered to feel the confidence in themselves to do amazing things. Luckily, I grew up in a family that has lots of confident women. My aunt Ashley shares a name with her and shares a lot of the same beliefs as her. And they're also women in STEM. And I just love that she took a big step in biotechnology. And at the time, that wasn't really something talked about. And I just think I think what she does is amazing. And kind of connecting that to the thing I'd like to plug is 6 years ago, my dad and I started it was a small school in India, and it didn't take as much time and resources as we initially thought it would. At first, my dad was a little scared it would be a big distraction in my life. But I think it was the exact opposite, and it's really helped me see how important it is to give back to others and the less fortunate, and always help whenever you can. So I guess that's just the motto I have. Just try to give back to others and be kind to everyone.
I watched some of the videos you shared of that school. Now, have you had a chance to visit? Have you been on the ground there? And then I was just curious, like, are they focused on all subjects?
So in the picture, one of the pictures I sent, they were all in school uniforms. So they all go to a different school, and after that school, they come to our school, which has a teacher, has 2 or 3 teachers most of the time. And what they do is help the students with the material they're already learning from school. But it also keeps, one thing that happens in the rural village that I come from, and a lot of other places, is students are in areas like that tend to have to field the farm or take care of their younger siblings, things like that. So it really gives them a place to get their work done, and also it gives them a resource of some sort, and the teachers are able to help them with their work. So there are some really little kids there. They must be like 7, and I visited it in the first year. I was pretty small, and I visited it when we were building the building, which is also somewhat small. But I haven't been able to go to India since I think 2018, and language-wise, my Hindi isn't that strong, so communicating wasn't the best. But hopefully, I can change that next summer and participate in something that helps me with my Hindi and helping these kids.
I think it's a really cool, valiant effort what you're doing there. I've got family and relatives in India. My uncle like sponsors a school, so I see and know how big, call it private schools or just helping fund little efforts or schools and villages are. So again, truly amazed by what y'all are doing at your age, all of you. Like, to sponsor and run a school, halfway across the world at your age is, again, just amazing. So appreciate what you're doing. Alyssa, so you are also involved with Dublo with Kevin, but I would love to hear, you mentioned someone you'd like to meet, which is a person I hadn't heard of until you mentioned it. So tell me about Kate. Is it Raworth?
What she did was she developed this theory called donut economics, where she connected our human needs in association with our planet capacities. So so what that kind of does is that it considers like how much like the Earth can actually provide for humans. And then if we go beyond a certain point, that's going to destroy our world, obviously. So she kind of links sustainability with economics, which I think is very powerful, because when we think about economics before, it's usually just like, oh, like what do humans need? Like how much resources do we need? And we barely consider how much the Earth can really give. So I thought that was really inspiring.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Again, just knowing the people y'all know and read about is fascinating to me. So that's awesome. Well, I really hope you have the chance to meet her, and I hope somehow this makes it to her. For all of you that have like a person you're looking to meet, I hope somehow we're able to get this to happen for you in the future. Jessica, would love to hear about Carly Kloss. Read a little bit about her. Would love to see why she inspires you. And then, of course, feel free to tell us what you're up to kind of outside kind of your school life.
I chose Carly Kloss, which I guess is not the most conventional option, but obviously, like, she's a model, she's a very popular model, but I also really do look up to her for what she's doing for both like the community and for, I guess, girls in STEM and coding especially. So she runs a giant like summer camp for girls to learn about like web dev and like app dev and all that stuff. And I think it's really cool how she's really grown to like encourage STEM and encourage computer science. And she's like even picked it up herself, which I think is really cool. And it's really cool how, she's connected a lot of people to a lot of different opportunities, which I think is really great. And obviously she's been really successful with modeling. So that's also really cool. And she's had a lot of like brand deals, initiatives. So I think that's really cool. And that's why I kind of like look up to her, especially being like someone who's interested in computer science and specifically like web development. So for the thing that I want to plug, I currently am like the founder of a nonprofit investor initiative, which is basically a nonprofit to help kids, especially girls and women, to learn more about business. Since a lot of business is very male dominated, and especially in fields such as like finance and marketing, where a lot of the highest roles or like CEOs, they're all men. So I found it really important to bring that back to the community and to allow more girls and women to be engaged in business, because I feel like business is definitely something that's pretty hard to engage in, or like something really hard to, go into or something like that, especially, at the level of like creating a startup or something like that. So I really wanted to give back. And so that's what I've been doing recently for nonprofit.
That's awesome. I was looking at, tell me if this was intentional, the name Investor Initiative or Invest Her Initiative. I mean, do I have it right? It's like a play off words, investor?
Yeah, we definitely like thought about that. We were thinking of like investors in like a company. So we're like investing in her. So
Vihan, your inspiring person is someone that inspires me. And I feel like if we can help each other meet this person, it'd be fascinating. So tell me about the person that inspires you.
Yeah, so one person that's like really, really inspiring to me is Greta Thunberg, the climate activist. So what really inspires me about her is just like the amount of impact that she's had at such a young age around the world. And she's like really brought a lot more attention to the climate crisis in terms of the teen perspective, because a lot of the time, like people just say like, oh, you're just kids, you shouldn't be worrying about this. But the reality is that we're the ones that are going to have to deal with the effects of climate change way into the future. And that's something that I take really seriously. So I really look up to Greta Thunberg about her unapologeticness about who she is and how she's so straight up about it, that like we're literally going to die if we don't do something about this right now.
And she's like your age, right?
I'm 16, she's 18.
Oh, she's 18.
But she like gained fame when she was like pretty young, like my age or younger, like 14, 15, and she just hasn't stopped. So I just find her really inspiring.
Well, tell me about, I think you're also involved in a nonprofit.
Yeah, so I'm part of a youth nonprofit called Youth Climate Action Team. And as part of that nonprofit, I'm like one of the directors on the executive board. And what we do is we just try to get as many teens involved as possible in the climate crisis. So we launched different initiatives. We recently like went viral on TikTok. And so that's how we've gotten a lot more people into our organization, and that's made our reach a lot bigger. And what I've done with that is I've run educational initiatives and things like that, but also in my own community. My friend and I was actually thinking about this when we were doing that green challenge, and when we were talking about it at the beginning of the podcast, was that I founded with my friend this initiative in my county to get climate education incorporated into the 5th and 6th grade curriculum. So we're actually working with like the school board right now to get that into place. We made like a proposal and things like that. So I'm really like trying to get involved as much as I can, both in my community and on a larger scale with the climate crisis. And yeah, I'm also trying to like get involved on more of like the STEM side, because activism is obviously really important, but it's much more important to be able to actually find and engineer the solutions that we're going to need in order to combat the problem. So right now I'm like, I'm interning at this company and I'm working on like climate change research right now, because I really want to be able to actually be a part of the solution to combat the problem.
That's awesome. Which, apologies to your employer. Sorry, I had to pull you away 2 hours earlier today. But I'll make you a deal, Vihan. If this, through some miracle, gets you to connect with Greta Thunberg, just please promise me you'll teach me TikTok.
Yeah, I'm actually addicted to TikTok, so I can definitely help you.
All right. Deal. I'm going to take you up on that. So I think that hopefully covered everyone. Did I miss anybody? If so, just raise your hand. I think hopefully I got all of you. Well, again, I really just want to thank you all. Again, it's honestly a pleasure for me to speak with all of you and learn just how y'all think, what y'all are up to. I have no doubt y'all are going to be very successful based on the things you're already doing at this age. So I look forward to following y'all. I'll be adding you on Instagram, following y'all, and just kind of seeing the success y'all go forward with. Wish you all the best of luck for the upcoming fall semester. And yeah, all I can say is, one recommendation is maybe as you go in further into your kind of educational career, and especially college, go to office hours, become buddies with your professors. And really, it's probably something you already do because the world is the internet, or the internet's the world, but it's that so much information. But where I found success is interacting with people across disciplines. So, if you're in space, you work with people in film and advertising. And if you're in, clean tech, you work with, biologists or like pre-med students. It's just fascinating the mixture you get when you start interacting with different folks. So that would be my recommendation. And I'm glad we have you all up on screen, because what I didn't tell you is that we have a surprise guest. Thanks for sharing the electric cars that you all would want, because let's bring up Ellen, and she's going to tell you about what you all. No, I'm just messing with you. Oh, that'd be so cool if I got any of y'all to buy that. But again, thank you all. Again, congrats on the Conrad Challenge, winning that and participating. And hope you all have a great semester coming up. Take care.